But there again, it's a choice to make. So that's a significant hit on the government's fiscal framework, probably a good one. But what's the trade-off, and what other areas are we going to look at? I don't think we can raise revenues.
Breaking news, everybody. Dominic Leblanc has betrayed the Trudeau Liberal government and admitted that he, in fact, is a conservative. Something many, many Liberal parliamentarians are doing right now. It really appears that they are trying to destroy us. And the reason why they want to destroy us is not simply just for power. No, it goes so much deeper than that. I'll be filling you in on some of the information I have discovered over the last 24 hours. And we just have a whole lot of wild, wacko, off-script BS narratives to debunk today, okay? I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment your thoughts down below, and give me a follow on other social media platforms as well.
BC Conservatives are showing off some proof that drugs from the Safe Supply program are ending up on the street. It's a presentation from the Ministry of Health shown to law enforcement agencies across the province, acknowledging the extent of drug diversion.
This is something where, you know what, I'm not even upset about the government officials for doing this. I'm not upset about them for knowing about this or even actively taking a role in it, because I expect them to do really terrible things for their own financial gain or for their own potential interests, right? I am mostly upset, though, about Canadian citizens who have failed to look into this situation for years, long before Donald Trump's threats of tariffs really highlighted the issue. This has been going on for years. Like, just let's think about this, okay? Somebody says to you, you know what? We got a really big problem with people dying on the streets. Let's make our own narcotics to give them for free. Yeah, that's going to help the What? And here's the part that really grinds my gears too. Like, I've been to Portugal, okay? And it is so fascinating when you go there, because part of their response to this was back, it kind of started off in like the late 1990s, took about 10 years or so for Portugal to be pretty much a drug-free place. Because what they did is, instead of locking people up immediately, they would send them to rehab. I'm summarizing here and being generic about it, but that is essentially what would happen. If you were a dealer, if you were caught on the street with a certain amount, you wouldn't go to jail and, be released on probation in 2 days. You would go to rehab and they would help you change your life. A part of that process included certain narcotics that can make coming off of other ones much easier. Obviously, if you are a very intense and frequent user, if you just cut off cold turkey, there are some substances where that could be lethal for you to do. In the same way that if you're an alcoholic and you just stop drinking out of the blue, you can actually die from that. You could have a heart attack. There's so many different things because your body becomes dependent on this one substance in order to keep going, and because you've messed up so many things in your body as a result of it. Look for the information. It's out there. This isn't rocket science stuff. But in Canada, what we did instead was zero rehab. Do you want to know what the options are for people who go to safe injection sites, by the way? I've been inside of them. They have pamphlets for $20,000 minimum treatment centers a month. $20,000 minimum a month. That's what they offer people for rehabilitation there. There's not this slew of staff who are helping people and consulting with them, It is literally, you go in there, you get your stuff, you do your thing, and if you want to take a pamphlet to wipe your behind on your way out, you're allowed to do that. That is the extent of it, okay?
An admission of failure.
We have a government that continues to publicly fund a program that is known to be putting drugs into the hands of criminals.
The BC Conservatives making public this Ministry of Health presentation made by the province's Special Investigative Unit directly to police last month, showing the province believes, quote, a significant portion of the opioids being freely prescribed by doctors and pharmacists are not being consumed by their intended recipient.
We've heard concerns about diversion from partners, and we have to tackle it. It's a priority. That's why the Ministry of Health stood up a special investigations unit.
The government's Prescribed Alternatives program has received significant scrutiny. U.S. President Donald Trump mentioned BC directly around his concerns on fentanyl. The investigative unit continues to investigate drugs prescribed to addicts, ending up in the hands of organized crime.
So here is what the Conservative Caucus of British Columbia published. It says, leaked Ministry of Health presentation confirms David Eby's taxpayer-funded safe supply is trafficked provincially, nationally, and internationally. It says that David Eby must immediately stop his taxpayer-funded drug trafficking. So some really important things inside of this document include the fact that a significant portion of opioids being freely prescribed by doctors and pharmacists in BC are not being consumed by their intended recipients. Months and months ago, there was video footage that came out outside of these offices where these pills are prescribed and given to users or dealers freely. No background checks, no, hey, what are you doing with this? It's just completely free. Oh, what's that? You want some fentanyl? Okay, we'll give you something. What? What on earth? And those people were caught on film. Then in the parking lot of those same establishments selling to people who appeared to look underage, by the way. And this part here is going to make you very mad. On the second page of this document, it says, for years, David Eby, his ministers, and provincial health officials have consistently downplayed the quantity of safe supply prescribed in British Columbia. However, the presentation attached reveals the number of opioids prescribed for safe supply. Note how they always use words like that. It's a safe injection site, safe supply. Words matter. They use words like that on purpose so that when it goes out into the media, all of the people who aren't looking into this think that it's safe. They think that it's good. I know it may seem kind of silly to buy into that, but people do. And that's why they use the words that they do. It's not like they would call it free supply, free consumption sites, right? Because then people would say, whoa, what is that? And they would look into it. They call it safe supply for a reason. So keep that in mind when the government goes and announces new programs, new funding, blah, 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 all these things. Keep in mind the language that they're using there to try to distract from what it actually is and make it look compassionate and good when it's deadly, okay? It goes on to say here that the opioids prescribed for safe supply have exponentially increased from just over 500,000 pills in the first 6 months of the program in 2020 to more than 20 million opioid pills and fentanyl patches between 2022 and 24.
Almost unbelievable. And one of the reasons I think that a public inquiry is absolutely necessary.
The presentation also includes active investigations, including more than 60 pharmacies breaking the rules by offering incentives, non-healthcare professionals witnessing the prescription of opioid disorder drugs, pharmacies offering incentives to doctors, housing and medical professionals, and some community housing staff requiring tenants to go to a specific pharmacy.
There's absolutely no excuse for bad actors, for any pharmacist or pharmacy to be engaged in the kinds of activities that are being alleged here.
Do you remember back in 2007, there were those two brothers out of Florida, if I'm not mistaken, who ended up trafficking. They made like hundreds of millions of dollars off of trafficking OxyContin. And just like they said in that clip, those same brothers behind that and everybody involved in their trafficking network were offering incentives to certain businesses, practitioners, getting people to only come to their store for pain pills. It was a thing, right? And it ended up becoming an absolute disaster. That was back in 2007. Canada, have we learned absolutely nothing? And you know what? I'm starting to get a little fed up with this gaslighting. I'm fed up with this lying. Why don't you just tell it like it is, okay? Because these politicians out there just keep saying, we don't have a problem. We're not Mexico. Oh, it's less than 1%. There's not a problem. Just listen, I have a clip to show you of Justin Trudeau talking about this like yesterday. And it is so infuriating because they say we don't have a problem. Yet they hand out millions of dollars that goes directly into the production of opioids, but we don't have a problem. And they don't have any accountability at all. Are you kidding me?
Border or fentanyl tariffs is something we need to use. We need to be very deliberate about how we continue to engage closely with the United States to make the case and demonstrate that Canada is responsible for a tiny part of the North American fentanyl problem, but that we are also bitterly touched by this tragedy. We also want to be part of solving for this. And over the next 30 days, we will demonstrate that even the tiny amount that is Canada's responsibility.
Oh, yes, such a tiny little amount. Do you not realize, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, just how fentanyl works? You need very little to have a very bad time. You need very little to completely disrupt the lives of whoever happens to get that very little. You can go ahead and say that it's very tiny, but that tiny amount, in terms of how you're calculating it, one, is only what's actually caught. So it's unaccountable for, the 99% of what still makes it through. And that tiny amount, if we're just going to use the Liberal Party of Canada's own statistics, is enough to wipe out 30% of the American population. Yeah, that doesn't sound very tiny, does it? At all, actually. And this right here is from Canada's own organized crime intel agency, where it states that significant amounts of illicit fentanyl are being produced domestically. Canada is now a manufacturer, an international source country. Clandestine drug labs continue to be dismantled, and the volume of synthetic drugs they are capable of producing exceeds domestic demand. Over 250 OCGs are involved in the fentanyl market, and the vast majority, 99% of fentanyl involved in opioid deaths, is illicit, i.e. non-pharmaceutical. And that is coming all out of this great nation.
Why should the longest undefended border in the world, which we pride ourselves in having, 400,000 people a day cross the border back and forth, billions of dollars of trade back and forth, jobs at stake. I don't understand why somebody can sort of willy-nilly throw out a suggestion that the entire Canadian border should be militarized. I don't think that's predicated on fact or evidence. We have incredibly strong teams, a strong border which is getting stronger. The RCMP, the CBSA, conservation officers, Indigenous police, provincial police forces, municipal police forces are cooperating. This is an important moment because we have jobs at stake. And so I think Mr. Poilievre has some explaining to do.
Mr. Poilievre has some explaining to do for the fact that he wants to protect the lives of the people in this country. And he wants crime to stop. Let's listen to some of that explaining that he has to do, I guess.
We will treat fentanyl kingpins, the traffickers, the manufacturers, and the organized crime behind them as the murderers that they are. They are murderers. They know that what they are doing is lethal. They are just as likely to kill someone when they sell 1,000 hits of fentanyl as they would if they fired bullets into a crowded room. They know they're killing people. And the criminal justice system should treat them, therefore, like murderers. And that's what they will face when I'm Prime Minister.
Moving on to one of the most popular confessions these days, as the Liberals are broke and desperate to get voted back in for a fourth term. Wow. Wouldn't that just be so good for this country? Dominic Leblanc has joined the team in betraying Justin Trudeau and saying, yup, I guess I'm a conservative now.
But I've taken note of a number of my colleagues who are seeking the leadership and might win, things like defense spending. So you hear premiers, you hear industry leaders say we absolutely have to get to 2% defense spending. I don't object to that idea at all. But there again, it's a choice to make. So that's a significant hit on the government's fiscal framework, probably a good one. But what's the trade-off and what other areas are we going to look at? I don't think we can raise revenues anymore. So what areas are we looking at to be able to be in a position to both be fiscally responsible but meet the need of the moment?
Did you hear that? I don't think we can raise revenues anymore. Meaning, I don't think we can continue taxing people into oblivion. When you factor in all of your contributions to EI, CPP, as well as your provincial and federal taxes, among other contributions that you may have, the vast majority of Canadians are spending upwards of 50% of each of their paychecks into one of the aforementioned categories. 50% of your hard work is going to what exactly? I ask this question all the time, like, okay, so you're being taxed so much. This country is in multiple trillions of debt. Is it worth it? Is what we have today worth it for what your grandchildren's grandchildren will still be paying off? Was it worth it? And the answer is astoundingly, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, it's not. I mean, look at everything we just finished talking about. We have an immense homelessness problem. People are lining up at food banks. People can't find housing. We have mass immigration. People are not able to find jobs. Government sector's growing very vastly, which is another topic I thought was rather interesting in Dominic Leblanc admitting that he is now a conservative. Listen to this.
Continued significant spending in a bunch of areas has to be ratcheted down. My own view is things as simple as the growth of government need to be looked at. I think we have to look at taxation policy. We have accumulated a certain amount of snow in front of the plow over the last number of years that make us uncompetitive with the United States, but also speak to confidence in things as important as our currency.
I'm just over here waiting endlessly for the Liberal Party to start attacking themselves and saying, you're against affordable housing, you're against childcare, you're against school food, you want all of those kids to go hungry, Mr. Speaker. Well, they can't do that because Parliament is prorogued. But boy, that would be pretty funny that now, they've caught themselves in a little bit of a pickle where, yeah, you can try the whole blame game and woke virtue signaling to really put people against each other while missing the complete point, which is the fact that we don't have money for any of these programs. And that is why we're in the situation that we are currently in.
In the G7, Mr. Speaker, and in addition, in the fall economic statement, Canadians can see supports for affordable housing, supports for $10 a day childcare, supports for public servants who want early retirement, Mr. Speaker, because on this side of the House, what do? We support Canadians as opposed to what they do, which is cut.
Yikes, that didn't age very well, considering that the Liberals have now had to publicly admit the thing that they knew all along, which is that cutting spending is actually really good for the economy. Social services are great when your economy is thriving, when you have investment in your country, when you're able to really use your money wisely. Yeah, let's give it back to the people then who absolutely deserve it and need it. But to do that by borrowing money and therefore making people even more dependent on you, it just seems quite apparent that the Liberal government, they want to destroy us without a doubt so that we need them and they can be our hero. They don't want to make the situation any better. They just want to keep adding to the social program, socialism, anyone, so that we're kind of screwed. And that's all that we have because we aren't worth anything. And that is something that Donald Trump's tariff threat is certainly challenging, which might actually be his end goal. My biggest question here now, though, is, gosh, who is Jagmeet Singh going to go after now? He's been going after conservatives for all of their cuts, right? And all of the money they give to their billionaire CEOs, which we know is actually what the Liberals, who are the ones in charge of our finances, have in fact been doing. And the cuts, well, now they say, yeah, we kind of need to do that.
Right now in this city, in Montreal, there are already workers who have lost their jobs because of the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs.
Well, if that's true, that doesn't make any sense. Just going to throw that out there.
We have to put in place better protections for these workers. These workers should not be left on their own. They should know that there's a government there for them. At a time when people are worried about job losses, people are losing their jobs, I'm surprised that Mark Carney has also added his voice to cutting jobs. I'm not surprised that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives want to cut jobs. That's what they do. At this difficult time, we need policies that protect workers, not CEOs, not billionaires, not big corporations, but we need clear plans and clear strategies and policies that put workers first. And with New Democrats, that is what we will always do.
Not CEOs, not billionaires. You mean not Mark Carney, who is a CEO and became a billionaire largely due to some of the government subsidies his companies were given, him and his wife over there at Eurasia. Same with Gerald Butts, by the way.
When people say, "Oh, the Conservatives are panicking, and this is a new approach," well, they haven't been paying attention because they've been going after and trying to position Mark Carney for a number of years. And you're right, the focus has been largely on Carney, partially in response to what the polls say about the Liberal leadership. But I think the Conservatives and I think Pierre Poilievre would love to take on Mark Carney in the next election and go after him, go after his previous record. You know, he claims to be an outsider, but this guy's getting confidential briefings from the cabinet. What about his ethics? He says he's, divested himself from a number of things, but he's still, we haven't seen anything from the ethics commissioner. We haven't seen any details about that. So I think, frankly, Mr. Poilievre relishes a chance to take on Mr. Carney after the Liberal leadership has come to an end.
This is just becoming a highly entertaining situation. Incredibly frustrating, but highly entertaining. I personally love seeing so many liberals, staunch liberals, coming on over to the right side of history. Welcome, my friends. Yeah, guess what? You tried to cancel us. You tried to freeze us out of our bank accounts. You tried to make us lose our jobs. But hey, in the battle of good and evil, good always wins. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because it doesn't go to the same lengths that evil does in order to win or be morally superior. But it turns out that conservatives, in fact, actually do have just an awful lot of common sense. And I'm happy that so many people from all over the country are united by this right now. The same stuff that our governments tried to use tactics to divide us. Ooh, scary conservative. Russian propaganda is the only reason why you're conservative. I guess that means that they're really good friends with our buddy Vlad now too, doesn't it? Wow, what a wild turn of events that I never saw coming. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Give me a follow on other social media platforms as well. Comment your thoughts down below. I think we're in store for a lot of entertainment in our politics, a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of calling people out, which I live for.